Welcome to the Challenge Chronicles. I am Devin Jordan. I am with Trace Armstrong and Rob McIntyre. Rob McIntyre is not with us on video tonight, unfortunately. As expected, there were some technical difficulties.
Expected.
This is the first technical difficulty for Rob in quite some time. So I think we should all be appreciative.
It's not my fault.
It is not Rob's fault. The Wi-Fi is out where he is in Florida, and they're afraid of 5G down there.
So this episode will be dedicated to the second part of our top 6 worst decisions in history of the challenge. In the previous episode, which we recorded earlier today, we did numbers 6 through Trace's 3. We'll get to Rob and my number 3, and then 2 on 1 for all of us. So let's jump right in. Trace, you just gave your number 3, which was what? Remind me.
It was Evan getting Jedi mind tricked by Wes to go into the duel one-on-one against CT.
Your number 2.
So my number three was the veterans not putting in Big Easy at some point on the Gauntlet 3.
Higher on my list.
Higher on my list as well.
So we'll come back to that.
This may be the only one that all 3 of us have it on our list, right? Because to this point, there have not been any, correct?
That is correct. We've had 2 people. We have had 2 people share one, but not all 3 of us.
Okay.
Your number 2.
I think it's very fitting that that's what it is. So my number 3, and when Rob made a comment about how there were a couple bad decisions made on the ruins, and my response was a couple. I think there were a countless number of bad decisions on the ruin. That was a season of bad decisions. But my number 3, and I'm kind of surprised. Well, I think there's definitely a chance that this may be higher on one of your lists or both of your lists. My number 3 is Darrell punching Brad.
It's not on my list at all.
Yeah, I didn't have it on mine. It wasn't really in the theme of what I was going with.
It was a terrible decision because Darrell probably would have gotten a win if he hadn't done that. So it's a really dumb decision. I agree with you. I just honestly didn't think about putting it on the list. Maybe it should have at least been in my honorable mentions.
I mean, I think this is a clear-cut case of he drastically impacted his probability, his chance to win the game. His forecast went to 0, all because he made the decision to punch Brad, right? It happened in one decision. We got a number of confessionals from Evan, and there may have been other people involved at the same time, that because Darrell went in the previous elimination and he won that previous elimination, they had decided to pretty much give him a pass through the rest of the game, right? And it's one thing for Evan to say that and the other people to say that, and another for them to actually follow through with that. I don't remember if there were other people outside of Evan. I do kind of remember Evan saying that, and that's kind of what matters in the context of the ruin, that if Evan feels a certain way, it's most likely that it will be guided in that direction. So I think there is a certain chance that that would happen. And there's no way that if Darrell is on that finals team, it reduces their chances to win the game, right? He's only a plus, if anything.
Yep. He's not a detraction.
So
definitely not.
I think this is definitely, I think when I looked on a Reddit post last night too, about worst decisions in the history of the show, this may have been number 1, to be honest. It was number 1 or definitely pretty high up the list.
Yeah, I can't say it's a bad pick at all because it was pretty dumb. All Darrell had to do was walk away.
And there's also not a positive outcome. They're like, what's the positive outcome to him punching Brad, even if they don't put him off? Like, I don't see, there's not a lot of upside to this decision.
Nope.
It was actually much lower on the post that I just referenced. It has 39 points. So it does have a significant amount of points. The number 1 upvoted response, though, was Dario and Rafi. So that's
recency
interesting.
bias.
It's really Dario and Rafi?
This post was from 5 years ago, right? So there weren't a lot of...
Okay.
That was around the time Bloodlines was airing, so that's recency bias.
Bloodline was ended 2015, beginning of 2016, I believe. So.
Yeah.
So that was number 1. Number 2 was one that I think all of us either have on our list or our honorable mentions, was Diem and CT not throwing in bananas and Camilla. And then number 3 was, I think I missed one.
We'll probably cover a lot of these at some point.
Yeah,
during
there's
it.
probably a lot in
I
our
think-
honorable mentions because I've got several of those.
I think
I have some.
I think number 3 was Darrell punching Brad. So
Yeah.
either way, I think this was. I mean, we haven't even gotten to this on our ruins recaps yet. That'll be interesting.
Coming on Patreon soon.
But all right, Trace, your number 2 moment. What do you have for us?
In the theme of challenge violence, CT punches Davis on Inferno 3 and goes home on a season he could have cakewalked to his first win.
I don't know. This one's kind of tough for me, especially if you have this number this is
2.
This is your
And
number.
here, follow my logic here with this, though. The good guys team really had almost no chance to win that season. They had some good competitors, and Bananas was a good competitor, but that Badasses team had Evelyn, Kenny, Derek, okay? And they were able to pull Tanya up and get her win as well through this. If CT is on that season, no one's going to throw him in elimination, and he literally can just sleep his way to the final and get his first win. Like, this one was just like rolled out, ready for CT to get his first win, and that didn't happen because he punched Davis in a drunken fury on the first night.
Rob, do you want to go or do you want me to?
I mean, you can. Well, so I guess my quick thing is, I think this is just a lesser version of what Devin just mentioned, because I think Darrell was more of a lock to win at that point. He's on a team that has a somewhat of a more advantage against the opposing team, and like I don't know if CT would have been able to skirt by elimination that easily that season.
But follow this though. Okay, hold on. I'm going to pull up the male cast of the good guys here, and I want you to tell me who's going to beat CT in one of these eliminations. Okay, first of all, you've got Johnny Bananas at that point in time, probably not going to beat CT in elimination. Let's see here. Ace, probably not going to beat CT in elimination. Actually, probably definitely not. Alton, this was kind of where some of the cracks in Alton's armor were started, so I think that one's probably closer. Tim Beggy ain't beating CT. Davis ain't beating CT, and that's all of the good guys.
I don't know.
I think things just happen, man. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, like look at what Timmy gets eliminated on.
That's what I mean. I agree with Rob here. I mean, I think the issue for me is that there's just so much time, right? It was the first episode of the season. Anything can happen between the first episode season and the point in which they actually win the final, right? So that distance combined with the fact that there are some decent that you just don't know what's going to happen there. I think there are certain things that Timmy could beat him in an elimination. I think there are certain things that Johnny at this point could probably beat him in. Do I think it's likely? No, probably not. But I just think that to compare this to the one that I previously had with Darrell, right? They were going against a significantly worse team, and it was much closer to the end of the game, right? There was barely time left in the game before they ran the final.
Yeah.
Well, and I also like, does he beat Alton if he's in that first elimination against him?
I don't know.
That's a good elimination.
Interesting thought. I just don't think CT gets thrown in. And I need to make an amendment because I know somebody on Discord is screaming right now. Derek was CT's replacement. So if CT's there, Derek doesn't get his first win. So I will amend my statement that he would have been on the same team as Derek. So I fixed that.
That finals team is pretty good. So let's just run through the finals for the Badasses.
And they have Janelle on it. How can they lose?
I know, that's
exactly
what I mean, right? Janelle's
it's a great team, actually.
It's Abram, CT, Evelyn, Janelle, Kenny, and Tanya is by far the worst player on that team, but
she's good that season though, man.
Yeah,
she's actually good that season. That's probably peak Tanya as a competitor.
That's her best. That's her best season.
I will give her credit, right? At that point in time, she's like a pretty good performer. So overall, that's probably one of the stronger teams that wins in the team season era. I don't know. Actually, I take that back. I don't think that at all. There's some really good teams that win in the team season era.
Most of the teams that win are pretty freaking good.
That Gauntlet 2 rookies team was very good. Even though it was a shitty final, that's a very good team.
The rookies team is obviously the worst, and then you've got like the red team on Cutthroat who's just okay. Well, most of the teams that win are pretty good.
Isn't there some fat at the bottom of the Gauntlet 2 team that wins? Let's look at this.
A beast.
A beast is probably the most egregious.
Yeah, Beast is probably the worst, but she kills that final.
She killed
I don't think like Randy, but despite what you guys think of Tina, I don't think she's an elite physical competitor. I think it's okay. I think the badasses from this season are definitely better than the rookies from that.
I agree with you. I think the badasses
It's a
team
different
might
setup,
be,
though.
I mean, even if you go back through time, let's see here. It was the Miz, Kendall, Landon, and Jamie who won Inferno 2.
That's Darrell and not Kendall.
Darrell, and I thought Kendall won. Oh, that was Inferno 2.
Kendall's wins Inferno 1.
Inferno 1, which had Katie on it. Yeah, I remember now. Sorry.
They're a very good team. I think
there are some good teams.
Trace,
that's also Abrams' best season on Inferno 3.
What are you talking about with Jamie? It was the good guys in Inferno 2. It was the Miz. It was Landon. It was Darrell. Oh, and Jamie Chung. Yeah,
Jamie Chung.
That Jamie, not Jamie Murray.
The famous Jamie Chung, who's actually on Dexter right now.
Oh, good for her.
Phenomenal season of Dexter. I will say that.
Everybody's telling me I should pick it back up because it's much better than the previous couple seasons it ended badly on.
Oh, yeah. Not even comparable.
So I guess my difference with this, I really look at this from a purely tactical and political perspective. I didn't really think about like would Lolo and whatever happened to her on Double Agents be a candidate then?
Nah, that's not. That's a bad case. They removed her from the game for her quote unquote mental health.
I suppose.
So Rob, I think what it is like these people had options, right? They knew the options available to them and they made the incorrect choice, right? Whereas the example that you brought up with Ninja or with Natalie in Final Reckoning, where she she took the wrong turn. She didn't know that option was available to her, right? She didn't know all of the potential choices that she had. Whereas these people, they did know the choices and they could have taken them, but didn't.
Yep.
But I think it's very similar to the Dario situation on Bloodlines.
No, Dario was just being a dumbass.
Well, so was Natalie. You follow the road, follow your partner.
No, Dario knew the situation. He knew he didn't have to go up there.
I don't think he knew the situation.
What do you mean?
Well, he didn't know because he thought the brother had won.
The TJ didn't blow the horn. He's been
he's an idiot.
He's been doing elimination.
Has he? I think that was his
first one. This is towards near the midway to half or near the end of the season. He knows that until TJ blows the horn, it ain't over, and he bum rushes.
I think we're very much picking at straws just to draw that much of a difference.
Regardless, this is my number 2 pick because CT, in my opinion, if he is still on this season, the badasses still win because that team is clearly better than the good guys. I mean, Danny is on the good guys team. All right. Was he on the badasses? Was he one of the badasses?
He was on their team. And he just lost to Davis that elimination.
Which is bizarre that actually happened. But
I mean, I don't think if Danny and Jameson losing elimination should never be bizarre.
Well, the fact that it was Davis is what's really bizarre. I think that's Davis's only win. So
probably, yeah.
And he's lost to a lot of other people. But regardless, I just really like I like this pick for me just because, I mean, sure, there's so many X factors that could go into this season. I don't see anyone on the good guys team wanting to ever throw in CT because they might potentially have to go against him. I just don't see it happening.
Okay. Number 2.
So,
Rob.
So this is my number 2. I have Johnny and Laurel throwing the mission on World of Worlds 2.
Oh. No.
So my rationale with this pick is that I thought about kind of including the West thing in that because I think voting in West was also a bad move. But with this decision, so they don't have the numbers on their team at the time or the opposing team. And then they throw the mission putting themselves at risk. They barely are able to get it so they're not voted in by their own team when they're able to swing Ashley when she doesn't have an incentive to. She just tries to vote that way. And then they lose the vote on the other team. And then also just if you look at the situation of what happens with this season, I mean, the U.S. team never loses on a guy's day. They also don't ever lose. The only time they lose on a girl's day is that one time they throw the mission later in the season when it's the Bud Hall brawl. I just think this is completely inexcusable of looking at what there was going on with their team.
We've talked about this before, and I think we came to the conclusion that there had to have been information that we didn't have at the time.
Why?
So they had the numbers on their team to get it voted the way that they wanted to vote it. Why would it not be possible that they thought that they had the numbers on the other team as well?
I mean, they could think that they were wrong.
I know. So that doesn't necessarily make it a bad move, right?
I think it's a completely a bad move. Laurel gets voted in that vote. If they don't do that, she doesn't get voted in. Like, I mean, clearly, like a part of making a decision is analyzing and obtaining the correct information. They did not do that.
Yeah, but in this situation, the information is like much less clear compared to some of these other ones you talk about, right? Where Darrell punches Brad, he goes home. The real world takes the penalty, they win, right? These are like very cut and dry. Whereas this, you're asking them to like read the situation of the players on the opposing team and be able to accurately assess what they're going to do individually.
But it's not even like they played things out and things went badly. They made a brazen decision to throw the mission. Like they did something completely against what someone would normally do in that situation without having that information.
I don't think it's brazen at all. I mean, I think there had to have been a reason why they did it. I think we're missing.
I think you're just putting too much stock in their political capabilities.
They're not morons. These are a couple of like the best players that ever been on the show.
Yeah, but a lot of these people aren't morons that we're talking about.
What?
Everyone makes bad decisions.
Who else? Like, where are these other like people that have like? What are these other like bad decisions that we discussed that are like all-time great players on the show?
Like we just talked about with Evan and Hickman making a bad decision. Landon made a bad decision. Like Wes has made plenty of bad decisions. Like plenty of people make bad decisions.
The Evan one I agree with. Wes, I don't know. Like I think Wes like used to be like a complete dumbass, right? Like I think he's made a lot of bad decisions.
I think like I'm not saying that they're bad political players overall. I think this was clearly a very bad move. I can show you the message from me complaining about it at the time before we even knew the results of the episode, talking about how bad of a move it was.
I think we even wasn't there something that came out with Johnny on one of the podcasts where he talked about the logic that they had when this happened.
The only logic I've heard from him was he thought it would make good TV.
No, I think he brought this up before, and that wasn't like I went and listened to the podcast, and that wasn't true. I need to go back and find it.
If you can find some information that will cause me to change my mind about this, I'll happily hear it. I think it is an inexcusably bad decision.
I see both sides of this argument for this situation because it was a pretty bad decision on their part, because part of the goal is to kind of stay off the radar. But I also understand, I think, why Johnny and Laurel felt they had to do it. They realized that if they did not take control of the numbers quickly, that they were going to be in the minority and they were going to be on the bottom. So it was either throw this and try to get power, or you're going to get somehow manipulated and picked off into elimination anyway. So you might as well go ahead and take your shot and throw it.
I completely like they can just win missions and they're not getting put in. Kara and that group had shown no like desire to throw them in.
Well,
like if
because of what happened to Wes, I think Paulie already had it in the back of his mind that he was going to screw over Bananas the first chance he got.
Correct. I think that's what it was. They wanted to be the ones that strike first. Right?
Yeah.
Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. Right, Trace?
Well, yeah, exactly. I think
I think that's a very bad decision. I think if you just, like I said, I thought about including the voting in of
I'm not disagreeing with you that it's a bad decision, but I'm saying that their logic towards making the bad decision wasn't wrong.
I think that's what I'm saying too, right? This was not a great decision. This wasn't the best decision that they've ever made, right? But I don't think it's one of the top 6 worst decisions in the history of the show. Well, I think that's where we're not on the same page.
So, like, if they win this mission, they can form the tribunal on their team. They can make whatever tribunal they want, and the UK team votes in whoever. If they're making the tribunal on their team, they could even vote in Kara or whomever, go see the elimination or vote them in at that point. They don't have to do that. But if they lose the mission, they're not at the mercy of getting voted in by the other team. They're completely like deflecting their power here. Just go win the mission. You can make the tribunal and vote in whoever you want, or you can just keep winning missions from this point on and never get voted in because that team never loses.
Okay.
That's why I think I understand where Rob's coming from. He's not wrong either. I think
just win the mission. If you win the mission, you can make the tribunal and vote in Kara or
who knows if they're actually going to be able to make the tribunal in a way.
Then why? If you can't make the tribunal, why are you willing to risk your own safety in the game?
Because I think their logic is they wanted UK to throw in 2 US people from the opposite alliance, and it just blew up in their face. Because if they were able to get one of those numbers out of that other US alliance, then Johnny and Laurel are officially in control of the game after that. That's why I understand their logic was sound, but their execution of how they did it blew up in their face.
I completely disagree.
Okay,
Why?
fair enough.
Because
Why-
that's
why
because
would-
you can't.
Why wouldn't you want two people from the opposite alliance to go in?
You can. I mean, because you don't have the votes to do that. Like you
They
don't have
thought
the
they
votes to
did,
get
though.
that done.
That's the
They
thing.
thought they did. That's the point.
But if you have the votes to do that, just win the mission and vote the person in.
But
But
they
you can't-
can't because then they could the US person could beat the UK person and they're right back where they were the next week.
And they wanted two people from their own team to be able to go in against each other.
That was the logic. So like I said,
I-
the logic was sound, but it blew up in their face completely and they both got eliminated. So yeah, it was a dumb decision. I don't disagree with that. I think it was a really dumb decision, but I think that from Johnny's perspective, you got to strike like Devin said, you got to strike first and strike hard, because if you don't, are you just going to would you rather sit around that house waiting to get screwed or go ahead and make the first move and go home in a blaze of glory? Because they
I mean, I
probably
think they
weren't
can
going to
do-
make it to the end at that point.
The best
but, like,
defense is more offense, Rob.
But like the thing is, they can just win missions at the entire time, and then if they have the votes already, just win the missions and keep going that way. I think
That was the issue, though, from the perspective of Johnny, and I remember him saying this on that season, that he thought that there was no way that they would be able to stick together as a team. It was just a matter of time. There's no way that this would be the Ruins Redux, where people just march to the finish pretty much in one united alliance. At some point, people were going to start caving in against each other.
Yep. And the thing too is technically Johnny and Laurel and Josh pulled the first shot because they blindsided Wes. And so it set the tone that, all right, this ain't going to fly any further. And so at that point, everybody's haunches are up. So it was going to happen regardless of when. It was a matter of when this would happen, not if. Because don't tell me that Paulie wouldn't have taken that shot at Bananas if he had the chance.
Well,
Because
I think if he
pulled the
keeps winning
trigger.
missions, he never has the chance. Like the numbers get never.
That's
the
not
numbers never get
necessarily
spoken up.
true, because let's say Johnny's not in the tribunal. It's Paulie, Cara, and Cam who form the tribunal. They can just vote Laurel or Johnny in. Done.
But like they could already do that if they had the capability to make the tribunal.
Wait, what?
So if Paulie, Carr, and Cam have the ability to make the tribunal, they also have the ability to vote Johnny or Laurel, whomever, in if they lose.
Well, even if they win,
Oh yeah, even if they do win. But I'm saying like if they do lose in that situation, that doesn't make it so Paulie can't vote them in anymore. He can still vote them in. He's just not voting them in as part of the tribunal.
and that's why my point is that's why Johnny and Laurel felt like they had to take their shot, because the numbers were not on their side. So they had to do something. And this is what they chose to do. It didn't work, and they both went home. I mean, that's where I'm coming from. Like, I agree with you, it was a dumb move, but I don't know that they had any other choices. Your argument that they could just keep winning, they would just have stuck around longer and still been in the same exact position they were in.
I think if they win this mission, they can make the tribunal. Then they could throw in Paulie, or like they could throw in Cara if they want to. They could not throw in Cara. They could just keep steamrolling along. They still have the numbers on their team at that point. Then like they can still just keep doing that. The only reason numbers get switched up is because they lose this mission and Laurel goes home.
All right. I think we're going around in circles.
Yep.
So my number 2, and we finally get to talk about this one, is CT and Diem not putting in Johnny and Camilla against Ty and Emily in elimination instead of Dunbar and Paula, right? So this, again, I think is one of those clear decisions that if CT and Diem decide to put in Johnny and Camilla against Ty and Emily probably win. That means Dunbar and Paula are probably in the finals, and then CT and Diem will most likely win the final.
Yeah, this was lower on my list. Tracy, did you have it higher on yours?
It's not even on my list. And the reason
Okay.
why is Diem, it was a dumb move not to do it to win, but it just wasn't going to happen. CT and Johnny were not really in an alliance. They were staying clear and keeping each other's names out of each other's mouth. But at this time, Diem was living in California, and before this had been going through some of her chemo treatments and stuff. And Johnny would go over and help administer her shots and pain medication and things like that. So like Diem and Johnny were good friends and off the show, and he was helping her during her cancer thing. That's why later on, when CT and Bananas played together again, CT said Johnny was always good when Diem was sick, and he's just not going to double cross Bananas again. So I just don't think that because of the off-season relationship that Diem and Johnny had, that was even remotely a possibility of happening. That's the only reason it's not on my list.
That was why it wasn't higher on mine. It's because of it's just it was hard to balance out how much they were trying to win versus keep a friend out of elimination.
Okay. Number 1, Trace.
I think there's no question what this is. I think it's a combo of not putting in Easy when they had the chance, when they were basically borderline throwing female elimination days to trim the fat, or just walking the final after the swim.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it, this is my number 1 as well. Rob, you had this where?
Number 3.
It all comes back to Gauntlet 3, like it always does.
Every time. Or the island.
This is the nexus of the challenge universe, is Gauntlet 3. I mean, we've talked about this moment a countless amount of times at this point.
I guess since we all are in consensus on this, I can't imagine anyone thinks this was a good decision. When do we think they should have pulled the trigger on Easy?
They should have pulled the trigger on Easy at any point. I mean, quite frankly, I know that it would have had to have been a veteran that goes in against him, but other than the sand elimination where you were bungeed to each other and
well, the push one too.
But even then, you just have to tire him out. You know, Easy's not hard to gas out. Once he gasses out, you can push that thing and get it over with. But the one where you're laying in the sand and having to pull him, if Easy decides he ain't gonna move, he ain't gonna fucking move. Like that was to me the X factor and why they didn't want to do it, because you would have had to have either Evan, Johnny, or CT go in there to pull this off. Because Danny's not going to pull this off. You know that Kenny's not just going to go in anyway. So that's just not happening. So it would have had to have been a heavy hitter. And there was a 25% chance you pull the unwinnable elimination against Big Easy. In hindsight, if everything goes exactly the way they do and the butterfly effect doesn't happen and TJ spins the wheel the exact same way, it would have been Evan versus Big Easy in a puzzle, and Evan would have smoked him. So that's hindsight 2020, but they were throwing eliminations left and right so they could get rid of the female competitors. Why they could not have strategically done it so that it's, episode 1 or 2, when there's some other options on the table that could beat Big Easy, why you don't do it. To this day, it is mystifying to me that they let him hang around.
They could have done it. And now that we're talking through this, I think you made a good point there. They could have started to throw missions on the men's day and at least take chances, right? You could have taken a chance with throwing Johnny in there because he's not as close with a lot of the other.
But you can't pick who goes in.
Well, they might have voted in Evan, or they might have voted in Kenny, or they might have voted in somebody. That's possible.
Yeah, like it's the rookies picking who goes in. That is the one issue with this for me. Why I put the Johnny Laurel one and then I want to have number 1 ahead of it is it's just like who's they, and like I can understand why Evan doesn't want him to. If we're saying Evan's the man in charge, which he usually is,
he's not going to be the one to go in against Big Easy and do the dirty work.
But
like he's not going to do it.
Go in.
Yeah, so I mean, either way, it kind of benefits them, right? So I guess there's no way that the other team is going to put in Easy though. At some point, don't they have the numbers to be able to guide this on the rookie team?
No, they don't.
No, they never at any point could do this because in order to orchestrate this, it would have had to have been veteran influence. Because here's the other thing. The other team had the ability to save somebody if they won. Right. So they could have just said, hey, we're going to save Big Easy this week. And that's not an option. So it could have been, it could have wound up being Evan versus Kenny because they could have voted in Evan and shit goes wrong or shit goes sideways. Reality, it'd be Evan versus Danny. Let's be real.
I mean, so let's think about it like this. So the two times that someone was voted in on the veterans team, the first time it ended up being Johnny versus who did Johnny go against?
Evan, when Evan beats him.
Right? They throw in Evan. So at that point in time, they throw in, let's say that the veterans decide that they want to throw in Big Easy versus Evan. Evan's probably not too happy about it. So that's not that much of a
That is not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. That's not a realistic situation for them to be able to do it. The second time in, where it's, and the last time that a male competitor goes in for the veterans team, and the last time that there's a male elimination at all,
Danny.
Adam King is voted in by the rookies, and the veterans throw in Danny.
Which is also a stupid move by the rookies.
Easy's protected though, right?
I don't recall.
Well, you have to account for that. I think Easy is protected.
I think they protected Big Easy, and then they threw in Adam King. Because the Austin Alliance basically said, fuck you, we're not putting in one of the big dogs. We're putting in somebody because Danny's getting voted in. So we're going to give him Adam King. Which to this day, it's incomprehensible to me. I don't think we talked about this on the original recap of the show. Why the hell is Johnny getting thrown against Evan when you've got Danny there? Like,
well, at the time they thought, they both had barely any seasons under their belt. I can see why they would think that Johnny was worse than Danny. Johnny's just smaller.
Yeah, I don't know what you do if you're them.
But that's my thing with this and why I didn't have it higher. I just don't know that there's a clear. I think you have to get rid of him somehow, but I think there's not a clear way to do that.
Well, that's why I also combined it with after the swim, just walk it. I mean, I know that's hindsight, but like they still beat the rookies.
It walking?
Say what?
Was he making it walking?
Yeah, they were making him jog and run, and he was, Brad was talking about how he was weeble wobbing down the street. Like
he is just so bad coming out of that walking. I don't know that he makes it walking.
I think he does make it walking.
I think they pushed him too hard on the swim too, right? If they just had him float and helped push him along, I think there's the chance that they could win.
Yeah, I get it. Like, I think that this is more complicated than it may not be sometimes. I just don't know if there's a clear way for them. And also, when we say they, like, who are we meaning by they? It's Evan, isn't it?
The dominant alliance on the veterans team. So,
yeah.
Well, who is that?
That's Evan, Kenny, Diem, or not? CT, Evelyn.
Yeah, Brad. My thing is just when we say they, though, those are the people being put at risk by doing this. Like they're putting themselves at risk by throwing men's.
I know that, and that's why I understand why they were probably hesitant to do it. But like, you've got Danny there. Like, not that Danny's they thought Danny was a great competitor. Why not throw a mission and orchestrate Danny versus Big Easy? Like, there are ways.
You can't do that though.
It's not a lock or a guarantee. I mean, there's just so many X factors. I get it. But there were some things they could have tried. The problem is they never tried. At any point did they ever try to get rid of him. And it was a poor decision. And thankfully, they all learned their lesson. But just so that we're not beating up on Big Easy, the fact that he was able to finish that final on All-Stars, kudos to him, because
he tried to quit. After he tried to quit.
I know he tried to quit.
He tried to get Jemmy to quit, so he had an excuse.
Yes, he did, but he still finished. And if you would have asked me if he was going to make it to the end of that final before it started, I'd have said no, and he proved me wrong, which again tells me if they had just not pushed him so hard on that final, they would have won. Because even with all the medical breaks, even with them having to stop and let him catch up, even when he was still on his feet, even with him taking forever to get his clothes on, even with all the medical attention stuff, they still beat the rookies to the flag and dug it out and ran it up the flagpole before they were even done digging. So, Again, a lot of that's hindsight, but man, I bet there's a lot of people that were on that team back then that wish they'd have done things differently.
Yeah, I think we are definitely aren't talking about production decisions with this. That could be its own very extensive list. I do think.
That list is too long. The dumbest moves made by production in challenge history. That show would never be over.
I thought about putting my number one worst decision in challenge history is Spies, Lies, and Allies.
But like I think that the having to finish with your whole team is just ridiculous. From
Hey man, you got to be Army strong, and you don't leave a man
Well,
behind.
what if Lacey turns an ankle and can't finish? What do they do?
They carry her.
But I'm saying she can't finish. She's whatever.
You can't
happens,
leave
she
a
has
person
stroke.
behind. Sorry.
So I mean, if she has the same situation that happened to Easy, like what do they do?
They probably let it slide. I don't think after this season they enforce that where you have to have.
Well, they didn't do it before. We talked earlier with Coral.
Yeah, they just gave them a
You
penalty.
take a penalty. They weren't DQ'd though.
That's what I'm saying is that they didn't do it.
This is the only time they've ever DQ'd a team in a final.
I think that's ridiculous.
But you also know that when this is all happening, production is going like, fuck yes, let's fuck with these guys. Like they are like, this is TV gold. Let's just continually fuck with these people.
This is the ultimate ending for them, right?
Yeah.
This is the ultimate reversal.
This is the best case scenario if you're Bunham and Murray producing a show.
Complete domination and then utter failure. All right, Rob, what is your
number one?
Number one worst decision?
This is a personal issue for me that happened very recently in Spies, Lives, and Allies, never voting in CT.
I knew that's what he was going to pick.
I think not only it's a bad decision for a lot of reasons, mostly just because if CT gets to the final, he has a very good chance to win. I think the one pushback I would see from people that I would give some credence to is that Kyle was only like 10 seconds behind from beating him. But I mean, CT was dominant throughout that final. If that final had been formatted like any other final, he would have torched them.
Yeah, you can't really account for the fact that production is going to be completely just reprehensibly illogical with how they construct the final.
But I even think with this season in particular, it was so easily set up to get rid of somebody who was a big threat. In the beginning part of the season, you have the one vote where everybody gets together to vote in the one team to go into elimination. Then you have the next vote where the power team can just pair together any one guy with any one female and throw them into elimination together. If you put CT with Tracy in any elimination, is he beating anybody?
Yeah, dude. I don't disagree with you.
Hard to do.
I don't disagree with you. Like it is one of the I know we talked about it ad nauseum when we did our recaps, but like these people that thought they were playing such a smart game were just playing tiddlywinks while other people are playing chess. CT's playing chess and they're all playing tiddlywinks.
If you could put him in with like a Tracy or just any of these bottom rung females against any decent rookie team, I think he loses. And that's not against him at all. It's just what happens. Like if you put anybody into elimination enough times, eventually they go home. That's just how things work. And then even in the second half of the season, you have a setup where you can vote somebody into elimination and sure they can take a spot on your team, but they can't call you out. So like if you're Josh and Devin voting CT in the second half of the season, like I know he can take the spot on your team, but he still can't call you out. Nope. And if let's say that they call CT and CT wins, he takes Josh or Devin's spot on Emerald. Like the rest of Emerald's not voting in Josh or Devin. They're not just going to listen to what CT's doing. So I think this is just completely moronic in any which way you slice it.
Yeah, so I mean, guess how many missions that CT won where he would conceivably be able to have some type of effect on the other men, right? So
it was like 3, right? Because he didn't run any in the first half.
He won 2 when it was still pairs, and then when it came down to teams, he won 2 on men's days. So I guess there were 4 opportunities that he could have had.
He won 2 pairs days?
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh, that's right.
He
I
and
forgot about
Berna.
the ones with Emmy. Well, Emmy, he had the one with Emmy too.
Emmy with one with Berna, one with Emmy.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean they had their chance and they never took it. And
so why wasn't this on your guys' list?
Because you could just, like Devin said, you could just take the entire season of Spies, Lies, and Allies and dump it as a bad decision.
It's like there's so many of these from like the last 5 years.
Yeah, I didn't want this to just be a bash the last 5 years.
Bad.
It's terrible. It's absolutely awful. Like I mean, they're just the casting is so poor. It is so poor that they just have a bunch of people out there that don't know what they're doing, and it just makes the product terrible, right? Like they need to get people, like if they plan to do this where they bring on new people to the show, they need to have an idea of what's going on, right? Otherwise it just like impacts the game in a negative way.
Yeah. And you know what though? if the season was shorter with an hour runtime, I think we have less complaints about it. But the fact that it was 19 fucking episodes that were 90 minutes each, except for one episode, which was 60 minutes, where literally nothing happened in that 60 minutes. And we even said, you know what? Because it was 60 minutes, it actually wasn't that bad because they didn't try to stretch it.
That's not the case. That was the 60-minute episode we all hated.
Okay.
That episode was like the worst episode.
It was the worst.
Was the Emmy performing Alien, and then
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then I amend my statement there. But my point still stands. If you're going to do 19 episodes that are 90 minutes each, you've got to have a good cast. And this cast for SLA was a shit show. It was awful.
I think the thing is, too, with me with this one is what we talked earlier about with Diem and Johnny's relationship, or just anything along those lines of people having really close relationships outside the show. That wasn't the case at all, seemingly, with this decision going into the season. You had, because Kyle had been screwed over by CT every which way. Their relationship had been tattered with backstabs going both directions. Josh had just had the previous season where CT was asking everyone to give him the goof in elimination. I don't think they had that great of a relationship. Then you had Devin, who at one point during the season even says that he didn't want to see somebody who'd already won a championship win again. So I think clearly they all came into the season knowing that this was an issue, and they just forgot about it as the season went on.
It's terrible. I mean, and if any one of them thought that they could beat CT in a final, or that they were like anywhere in the same ballpark as him when it came to their ability to compete in a final, they're lying to themselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, we saw it in the final. Again, I know Kyle only lost by a couple seconds, but I mean, CT was outstanding throughout that final. I don't think anybody else on the cast was touching it.
No.
In a normal final, or in a logically constructed final, he blows everyone out of the water.
Oh yeah, if it's timed checkpoints, he won that hands down. The fact that it was basically a just finish until you get to the last leg, it was closer than it should have been.
Okay. I think we belabored this enough. Honorable mentions. What do we have?
All right, here's a scorcher. Because it had really no effect on the game, but I still think it's one of the most illogical thought processes in the history of the show. How the hell on the island are Johnny, Kenny, Derek, and Dunbar hyping up Dan Walsh and Tyree to beat Evelyn in a face-off so that she doesn't get a key? Like,
what do you want
What do you want them to do?
I know, that's why. It made no effect on the game, and it still worked out for them. But, just the fact that you're having to watch Kenny and Johnny hype up who's now sober Dan, good for him, seriously. The fact that that's who you're relying on is Tyree to beat Evelyn. Oh, Lord Almighty.
Can you imagine how Johnny feels at this moment, that pretty much the entire fate of his game rests in the hands of Dan Walsh?
Tyree and Dan Walsh is who the fate of your game is in.
I think
he's thinking to himself, man, this is really what it's coming down to.
It's funny. I think Johnny's, especially after we went back and watched, I think Johnny's really bad throughout that season, just generally. Because remember towards the end of the season when he just kind of gives up and starts yelling at Evelyn when he needs her to work with him.
Yeah.
I actually think from the island, not voting off Kenny when they had the chance was also a bad decision.
Which was never happening.
It wasn't going to happen. But if the outskirts of that group realized that they were never going to be in Kenny and Johnny's long-term plans, everybody this side of Paula and Johanna could have voted against them and gotten them out instead of Tanya.
Yeah, I think everybody on that cast was just over being there and just wanted to get paid and go home.
One that I have was, I think he still probably loses, but I think it's a lot closer, is Derek choosing Timmy instead of David in the last elimination for Gauntlet 2.
That's a pretty good.
I think that's on there. I think War of the Worlds 2, this didn't really happen on screen, so I guess it's harder to say. But Jordan and Tori not just voting in Nani on War of the Worlds 2 when there's that one vote where Tori gets voted in. Everyone on that cast said they wanted to vote in Nani, but Leroy wouldn't do it. So they tried to tell Tori and Jordan to vote that way, and they didn't do it. And then Tori got voted in anyways.
Here's another good one. I have Paula sticking her neck out for Dunbar in Duel 2.
That was in my honorable mentions.
Yeah,
as well.
I thought about that one.
Oh my gosh, Paula, what were you thinking? You were in the dominant alliance and you screwed it up.
Exactly. She is no longer aligned with Evan and the rest of the group. She's kicked to the curb and quickly goes into elimination.
There's the also Rivals 2 when Nani and Teresa burn votes on Leroy, and then DM's able to just vote him in because they burnt too many votes on him.
Yep.
I'll give
That's a
credit
bad
to
one.
I'll give credit to Greg on Discord for this one. Brad insisting not to be a team leader on Sexes too. And when Mark Long tries to justify their decision to have Eric be a team leader,
He worked at UPS.
no, he's really good at packing luggage. That was his really good at packing luggage.
One dishonorable mention. I don't know if you guys considered it at all. It's just one moment that people pick out that bothers me because I think this is the absolute right move. Is when Joss voted in George on World of Worlds 2.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
incomprehensible.
I just think if he doesn't vote that way, he's voted in next week.
Well, he went home anyway, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, but he goes home in a purge that's randomly done together.
But even if he's in elimination, he's got a chance to stick around. Instead, by voting in Georgia, he gets stuck with Kaylee and he's purged.
I think that's complete. First of all, Kaylee's in the tribunal. He can't vote her in that week anyways. But I think that's complete results-based thinking. Like, how is he supposed to prepare for a purge where it's swimming for once, which Kaylee's bad at? And he's randomly paired together with her.
And we've belabored this before, and I'll say it as brief as I can. Joss was not playing his own game. He was playing Paulie's game, and it bit him in the ass. Like, everything about those decisions he made, none of them benefited him in the long run at any point, other than he just stuck around longer. At the end of the day, he was screwed.
If he votes against Cara, they're voting him in next week. Find the incentive to keep him around.
For how much we talk about War of the Worlds 2, I can't believe you guys say that you don't like War of the Worlds 2.
I think there are. My issue with War of the Worlds 2, honestly, as much as anything, I just think the season is such a propaganda film. I find it such a biased narrative.
Okay, what else do we have? So here's another one. These are a couple more that people on Discord had. The women knocking down their puzzle in the final in Sexes 1.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah. The other one that I had was an off-screen thing, but it really happened. Originally, when they drafted on Fresh Meat 2, Darrell picked Laurel. And for whatever reason, I don't remember why they reset it, but they reset it. And on the redraw, Darrell picked Cara over Laurel, and he went home first. If he's with Laurel, can you imagine Darrell and Laurel on Fresh Meat 2?
Yeah.
That was bad. Bad.
I think another bad decision too. So on Fresh Meat 2, when Wes and Evelyn kind of coordinate to get CJ voted in against Brandon, when Brandon has Caitlyn as a partner, it's like they're not even allowed to compete in the elimination because Brandon drinks beforehand. But I think both of them smoke Brandon and Caitlyn in any exile. So if they just gotten themselves voted in instead, like I know it always seems counterintuitive to get yourself voted in. I think at that point they can just actually preserve the integrity of their alliance, and Landon doesn't end up voting against Wes later on in the season. I think that would. I don't know if that would really count.
Let's put a pin in that because after we finish the ruins, Fresh Meat 2 is up, and I think there's a lot. There is so much meat on the bone for Fresh Meat 2. We could spend an hour talking about that one episode.
Okay. That's it. Thank you for listening. Listen to part 1. If you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/The Chronicles. We'll talk to you again soon if you're a patron for the All-Stars 2 recaps, which will probably come out on Friday. Thank you and have a good week.